Hi, this is Alexandra with Beadaholique, here to show you how to use the baby jewel loom with artistic wire. So here's a sample piece that I made. It's just a component that has 8 warps using the 6/0 size seed beads, and you can see I finished each off with a little bead cap. So we're going to do a similar process here using some size down components. I've got 8/0 beads and some size 2 Griffin silk. I had used 4 on here. We've still got the 26 gauge wires, same as this, except we're going to do gold. And for tools, what I'll be using is the baby jewel loom, which if you're not familiar with, we have a video. Please visit how to use the baby jewel loom if you would like. And we're also going to use a big eye needle. For other tools, I have cutters, I have round nose pliers, chain nose pliers, nylon jaw pliers, and a pair of scissors. So let's get started. I'm going to bring in my 26 gauge wire, and I'll be using approximately 6 feet of this, but I'm not going to take it off the spool to begin with because I want to make sure that I have enough. And the amount will vary depending on how many weft threads you use. So I'm going to take the end of my wire and begin by securing it around one of these buttons in the back, coming around a few times to make sure I get a nice connection there. Then I'm going to come up over one of these grooves and secure it down in, come across the length of the loom, and over the back side to the other piece here and secure. Now I'm going to space for my size 8/0 beads 2 grooves apart to make sure I have space for my pieces to go. And if you're familiar with loom work, you know that oftentimes Nymo thread or fireline are used. So the stiff wire is a bit of a departure. And it opens up possibilities for different design aspects like finishing off, making pendants and earrings, and different sorts of components. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, I'm going to do 9 warps, so I have 4 more. Okay, so completing my 9th warp, come down into that last groove around the back and get a nice secure connection. Come around 3 times just to make sure, and clip my excess wire. So that's how it looks. And if you want, you can take your nylon jaw pliers and come in and kind of straighten those out if you want a little bit. But once you start weaving, they're going to be tightened up. So now we're ready to start weaving our beads. I'm going to bring in the Griffin silk, which has a needle attached, and it's about 6 feet worth. So with my little wire needle, I'm going to begin picking up 8 gold beads. And once those are on my needle, I'm going to keep them on that wire needle portion, come underneath my warp threads, my warp wires, and secure those beads into place between each of the wires. Now this can be the trickier part of the project. Just put your index finger underneath there, get them caught, 1 for each warp thread, and pull the cord through. Now I'm going through the underside of the loom, taking off as much as I need of the silk from the spool. And I'm going to come back over the top of those beads to secure them in the same way that I would for regular beadwork. This little threaded needle makes it a slight bit trickier to get it over. You just want to make sure you're over every wire and pull that through. So we've got our first line of beads. For my next row, I'm going to use purple. So I've got my 8 purple beads on, and I'm going to come underneath and lay those up into the warp threads. Oops, switch fingers and get that nice and secure. I'm going to pull the thread through, get a good tension on there, and string back through the other side. Now, there are ways of using stiff wire to come through each row of beads. You're absolutely welcome to do that as well. This is just an alternative, using the stiff wire for the warp threads and a softer cord for the weft. All right, so next I'm going to add 9 turquoise beads in the same, or 8 beads, sorry, in the same fashion, and I'm going to continue that pattern for a total of 9 rows. All right, so I've added my 9th row of beads in the pattern, and I'm ready to tie off and weave in my thread. Now you can see that I've done that on this side already with my tail, and I'll show you exactly how that was done. I'm going to take my scissors, clip off and leave myself at least 6 inches to work with. And what I'm going to do is put on my big eye needle. Now it's going to make it easier to get underneath my thread bridges and make my knots. All right, so now I'm going to come back through the beads that I just, actually I'll come back through the row up above, and I'm going to double back through the row below just to make sure it's nice and secure. Because off of this edge is where we're going to be creating some wire wraps, so it's good to reinforce that. So I'm going to come back up just a bit into this second row and create a little knot by coming underneath the thread bridge and tying in. I'm going to come through once there and then travel through a few beads. I don't want my knot to be too chunky so that it won't fit into the holes of the beads. And because I'm essentially tripling or even quadrupling through the beads now, I want to use my plier just to help me get through there. Now, just to be secure, I'll come up into the next row and make one more little knot. Oops. There we are. And you always have the option with the big eye needle to actually take off that thread needle from the Griffin and use this instead if you find that easier to weave with, because that other needle can be very thin. All right, so I'm going to weave in and clip off my thread. There we go. Okay, so at this point, we're ready to take the wires off of our loom. Now to do that, I'm going to take my flush cutters and right at the base, kind of down next to that circle, just going to one by one clip off my threads, like so. I'm also going to use my nylon jaw pliers to straighten out those warp threads a little bit. And I'll do the same thing on the other side, using my cutters to separate those wires. And got a nice long section on either side to work with, so that'll be plenty. So I'm going to flip it over and start on this side where the wires are straighter. It looks easier to work with at the moment. I'm going to scooch my work up just a little bit toward the ends. Now what we want to do at this point is section off our end pieces into groups of 3. So I've got an end group of 3 here, one here, and one in the center. And what I'm going to do with these is create sort of a peacoat effect by adding on 3 beads. And I'm going to use a contrasting color from the previous last row of my weaving. I'm adding on, starting in the center, a gold bead on the 4th wire in from one side and a gold bead on the 4th wire in from the other side. I'm grouping these 3 together, and over the top I think I'll take a purple bead and land all of those wires through the center of that purple bead. That's going to bunch my wires together in a way that I can manageably create my wire wrap. So for that, or I should say my wrapped wire loop, it's going to be all 3 of these wires wrapped around. So I'm going to secure those beads, take my round nose plier, grip just above the bead, and there's a bit of space there which will scooch up when we're done. I'm angling off the top, coming around the top prong of the tool, and I want to control the size of my loop and stay consistent with that for the remainder of my wraps as well, so I'm going to pay attention to the size. Now I'm going to take all 3 and coil them around the base of that loop just once, maybe 1 1/4 times. And with my flesh cutter, I'm going to trim the excess. Now with my plier, I can gently close down those ends so they don't catch on anything, and I have my first little wire wrap. So I'm going to do the same thing with this side of these 3 wires and with the 3 wires on this side, and then I'll meet back up with you to show you how that turned out. Alright, so I'm on my final wrap here, and you can see that I've stuck with the order of the beads as I've added the different layers just to keep with the pattern. So here I'm on my turquoise layer with the 2 outer beads of these 3 wires, and then I'll add a purple over the top on the 3rd one. That creates a nice tapered effect. And what I want to make sure is that I'm getting the tension right as I pull so that each of these 3 lines is the same length. I think I've got that about right. I'm also paying attention to the size of my loop and just working that wire around the edge to complete the coil. All right, so there we have a little wrapped wire component using the baby jewel loom. Now there's a lot of design opportunity here for different finishing techniques, strand reducers, multi-strand clasps, earrings, necklaces, pendants, whatever you can think up. And depending on how many warp threads or wires you use will depend on how many wraps you get along the edges. So I hope you enjoyed this video. All these tools and supplies are available at Beadaholique.com. Be sure to click the notification icon on our YouTube channel for all the latest updates. We have new videos coming out every week. Thanks for watching.